Well, welcome Matt Thornhill to Age Ready US. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Matt, you've been a great, you've been a phenomenal person that I've learned so much from over the years, and it's an honor to have you here on the show with us. The show that like what we're talking about is really what individuals really need to be thinking about across the spectrum when it comes to preparing for this next season of aging here in the United States, right? And
Yeah.
so, Matt, you've written a number of books. One of the books I'm familiar with is Boomer Consumer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, I actually, before I was the boomer guy, I spent the first 23 years of my career in the advertising business where I was studying consumer behavior. And the consumer we were typically studying back then was 18 to 49, and it was the baby boom generation because I entered the workforce in 1982,
Hmm.
and boomers were in the prime of their earning years then. But around 1999, 2000, I decided I was done with advertising and I wanted to do something else. And I started a consultancy called the Boomer Project, really to try to help marketers understand that something miraculous had happened to boomers starting in 1996. They started turning 50. And as a result, they were out of that golden demographic of 18 to 49, and they were now invisible to most marketers.
Hmm.
And I said, well, this is stupid. At the time, I had friends who were turning 50. It's like they're not done consuming. This is going to be a huge, significant group that marketers and brands will need to understand. So I partnered up with a local research company, went out and did a research study, found out that boomers did indeed feel like they were being ignored, or worse, marketers just wanted to sell them Geritol or a Cadillac, or maybe Depends. So we
I
started
love
the,
Cadillacs.
yeah, well, Cadillacs are fine cars. But so we started the Boomer Project and thought that it would be like a quasi specialist ad agency, but in reality, we ended up becoming a consultancy to organizations that wanted to understand older baby boomers, aging boomers. So the financial services sector called, the senior living sector called, all the pharmaceuticals, everybody. I mean, Walmart called us up and said, "Help us understand boomers." And we're like, we're just a small shop. What do you need us for? And it's like, well, we don't get it. We don't understand what's happening here. Hershey's called us up and said, "Matt, we think people over 50 still eat chocolate." Like,
Yeah, that's probably a
sure.
yes.
So I did that for about almost 20 years, ran the Boomer Project, wrote the book, Boomer Consumer, all that kind of stuff. And then decided after that, after almost 40 years at it, that I was ready to try something new. And I started a company in 2020 called Cozy Home Community. It's a completely different line of work. I'm building small, affordable, middle income housing for seniors. So it's essentially, I call it active adult with wraparound services. And our first project is going to be in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. We're breaking ground later this year, and we'll have people moving in late first quarter next year. So
That's awesome.
I'm now in the senior living business.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Slippery Rock is a great community. Pennsylvania there, well, I mean, overall on that the western side of the state is there's such a high density of seniors there who want options in how and where they age, how they're going to do it. So that's super exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
How about personally? Tell us just a little bit about your family.
I've got four kids. It took me two wives to have that many, but I have four
Yeah,
kids, and they range in from 35 down to 19.
nice.
And I got two dogs, and my home office, sometimes I don't know when the UPS truck drives by, but my dogs do, and they'll tell me.
And are you you're currently a resident of Virginia?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yep.
live in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, great. Okay.
But
Well,
over the years, as I've worked in helping people understand the boomer segment, I've been invited to speak about boomers and demography literally all over the world, from um, Brazil to Germany to Spain to Australia, so
mhm.
and all over the states and Canada. So I'm glad that I don't have to travel anymore. I did a lot of it, but I'm
Yeah.
done.
Well, I remember, I met you when I was at at one of my previous companies when I was working at Home Instead. And then when I went from Home Instead and started working with Asbury Senior Living in home and community-based services, you were doing some work with Asbury at the time. And then it was that was a great time to connect. I was commuting, I'm a Southwest Iowa farm boy, and commuting, I think that year, for a couple years there, with commuting from Omaha to Frederick, Maryland, was maybe a little too much on me and on my family. It was fun to take the flight out with all the Nebraska senators on the Southwest flight that was coming back each Friday afternoon. I got to know Don Bacon and the senator from South Dakota. They were always on that flight. So what a great experience just being in that Virginia, DC area, because it's so different than life here in the Midwest. But that was a great time to reconnect with you. You were just beginning as I was ending at Asbury to start HCAN. You were just starting Cozy Home Community. So after having done this over the last 5 years and you doing that, I'm great. It's great to hear that that you're making it happen in Slippery Rock, and that's going to be a great community for you to flourish in there. So.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. We're building 46 homes. It's going to be a rental community. Um, the homes themselves are 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,200 square foot. We arrange about 10 to 12 of them we call it a colony, and put a common building in the middle of the common house.
Hmm.
We have 4 colonies, and the site happens to be owned by the Slippery Rock University Foundation, and it's adjacent to the university. In fact, you can walk about 100 steps and you're at the student center for the
Wow.
university. So we're pretty excited about that location.
That's, it seems like to me, there's a lot of individuals I talk to that have like gone to K-State or they've gone to Iowa State in the past, and they're looking in retirement to move back to to their college towns because
Yeah,
there's so many activities, and there's also that feeling they had of
right.
when they were young, like they're recapturing something. And I think doing it next to university as well offers lots of opportunities from a labor perspective as well, and to try to integrate various levels of aging. So that's awesome.
Yeah, one of the things we're still negotiating with the university is we want one of the housing units in each of the 4 colonies to be made available for grad student housing, and perhaps even subsidized by the foundation, because
Hmm.
they've got the gerontology program. They have the health sciences, like the health professions like physical therapy, occupational therapy, nurse practitioners. So we'd like those students to live in our community and have some intergenerational activity going on because of that.
That's awesome. It's a
Yeah.
brilliant idea. Well, thanks so much for participating today, for helping us. We really want to, like, our two top values at our company are pursue the genuine success of others and elevate the privilege of caregiving. Because we feel like, anyone who gets into home care or aging services, I was just recording some of our content for TikTok and Reels recently. I ran across an episode. My wife she drew me into this show. It used to be Dateline, then it was The Office, and now it's The Closer. And it's this detective show. And in 2006, there was an episode called Mom Duty. And in this episode, Mom Duty, there was a mother-in-law who was being asked by the daughter-in-law to leave and to move to a senior living community. And the mother-in-law had been to the senior living community. It was an assisted living community. And she said she couldn't do it because of some of the things she smelled there and her experience. And I think that the idea of senior living, home care, and aging services is so warped sometimes by pop culture's understanding of it.
Mm.
Well, in this episode, the mother-in-law tried to kill, or did kill, the daughter because she was trying to get her to move. And I think, like, one of the things the show did well was help underscore the need that we all feel for belonging and for home, right? That we can be that passionate about it. But I think what pop culture sometimes does is it warps the idea of what an aging services journey is and can be. It's still stuck in the 1970s and 80s. when we have innovators like you out here creating cozy home community, we've created AgeCan. Others are, we're going to talk today. There's a ton of innovation happening. Like there's well-meaning people who want to do business with a purpose inside of aging services that I think we can just get a much better representation long-term of aging services and pop culture, a better understanding, embracing this next stage that we're all going to be moving into at some point, right? So all of these innovations are really helping, and I think the entertainment industry will figure it out at some point.
Yeah, I would say that what's going to happen over the next 10 and certainly 20 years is what it means to grow old in America is going to change. We're going to go through a transformation of how we live this last phase of life, and it's going to be okay to grow older. It's not going to be seen as, in fact, it's stupid that we even have to have these conversations because to grow old is to live. I mean,
Right.
what's
Yeah.
the alternative? If I'm not going to grow older, I'm dead. And that's not really very appealing. So I'm going to grow older and try to do it in a way that I still can be a vital contributor to society and culture and grow myself and look at how I can give back, all those kinds of things. And they're all positives.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we get inundated with nothing but ad after ad after ad from, I'll call it the aging industrial complex, trying to sell us
Hmm.
a drug or a pill because, aging is an illness we need to cure. It's like,
Hmm.
aging is a blessing we need to celebrate. So I think
Fantastic.
there'll be a transition that takes place over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, it's an honor to get a chance to talk with you today about this because I know that anytime we get an opportunity, again, this helps us educate others, which is part of the pursuit of the success. Like we want to age successfully. And a big part of that is you have different levels of caregivers now that are emerging in the aging services industry. Really, I mean, there are the caregivers providing direct care, and there's the caregivers who are trying to come up with new opportunities or improve current opportunities, right? To make the situation better for people as they age. So there's a wide array of caregivers, I think, that are kind of emerging now. So we have this new emergence of caregivers, people that are considering what it's like to age, what it's like to age gracefully, what it's like to really be a caregiver in a specific industry. And so I know it's an honor because I know you've kind of poured, this is your life's work, and we get an opportunity to educate others, which is a great honor. And yeah, I'm so excited about the discussion today. And I know you've prepared a lot of really great thoughts that we've studied and we've talked about in the past, but really have put them together in a very kind of exciting way to understand what we should be thinking about, both excited about and what we should be looking forward to.
Yeah. Do you want me to dig into some of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, we would love that. I would love that.
Well, what I wanted to do was to take advantage of this opportunity and kind of share some thoughts that I've have being a demographer studying boomers for the last 40 years about kind of where we are as it relates to demography. I've got three things that I think people misunderstand or don't fully understand or appreciate about where the country is going from a demographic standpoint. So let's do that, and then we can kind of
Yeah,
shift into
that's great. Thank you.
caregiving and such. So I'm going to share my screen, and you have to give me a minute to do it and not click the wrong button. So hold on
Absolutely.
a second. All right. So you should see me and perhaps a slide that says demography is destiny.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's where we'll start because that is the case. So, people have said that for years. They get all excited about it. And I think it's true. But interestingly, when you think about demography, you think about numbers and, um, numbers don't lie, but I like to tell people that they do tell stories. So how are you looking at the numbers and what are the stories they're telling you? And the first story you need to know from the numbers, and I'm going to share a little bit of them, is that the future is older. The future is not going to be new stuff. The future is older. And what I mean by that is we're going to have more older adults than we've ever had. By 2030, the population in America, 1 out of 5 people in every state will be 65 and older. In the year 2000, it was 11%. So now by 2030, it'll be 20%. And 9 states will be over 25%. 1 in 4 people walking around will be 65 and older. Never happened before. So, Mark, a question for you. Which of those dark states that have more than 25%, which one's going to be in the worst shape or maybe the best shape? They're going to have the most people as a percentage of their population
Oh, the most people as a percentage of their population
that are over 65.
that are over 65, I would probably say it would either be I know Florida is like Trent is already at about 20%.
Oh, yeah.
I think Nebraska is pretty high, isn't it?
I don't remember exactly what the prediction is for Nebraska, but yeah, it's up there. But no, number one is Maine.
Maine. Okay, yeah, that's
Maine
right.
is going to be like 35% over 65.
Maine and Vermont, I know, are very high
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
percentages.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the boomers are the future. And what I mean by that is, despite their efforts, boomers have reached this stage of life. They're now 60 to 78 years old this year, which means they're older adults. Now, they may not act like it, and they certainly don't act like the last generation of older adults did at this stage of life. I remember my dad in his 50s, the only time he ever wore sneakers was when he was in a gym.
Hmm.
And
That's interesting.
I'm 64 and I'm out playing pickleball in my sneakers all the time and with a bunch of people in their 70s playing pickleball. And it's different. We're at a different stage with a different audience and they're wired differently. And then the other kind of related to the boomers, you've heard this number. I know you've heard this number
Yeah.
10,000 times. Maybe your listeners haven't, but starting in 2011, the first boomers started turning 65. So someone did the math and said, okay, there's 3.65 million boomers turning 65. So that means every day, 10,000 boomers are turning 65. And it's a fun number to share, and it's been shared up 10,000 times if
Yeah.
you're in the senior living space. But there's a problem with it. The problem is it makes it sound like it's a one-time event, but it isn't a one-time event. It's our reality for the next 30 plus years. And what I mean by that is the Census Bureau has projections based on births, deaths, and immigration. And for the next 30 years, we're going to have more than 3.65 million people turning 65 every year. You can go to the Census Bureau, download the chart, and it's my chart here,
Yeah.
but no year is it less than 3.6, in fact, 6.8 anyway. The one that jumped out at me was like, apparently in 2056, we're going to have 4,800,000 people turning 65. That's 13,000 a day.
Yeah.
And the point here is that this talk about, gosh, boomers are going to, or the silver tsunami, this wave is coming of boomers. And once they're done, well, we're done. No, we're not. There
Yeah.
is no done. We're going to have a steady stream of older adults every year from now forever,
Forever.
basically. So, I like to say we're producing and retaining more older adults than ever imagined.
We just did, we actually just recorded some content on this, and in the 80 plus population alone, our segment in the home care segment is going to grow by 50% over the next 10 years. And when we talk to brokers and whatnot that are in our business looking for transitional executives, I can't think of another industry where you can guarantee that your market segment is going to grow by 50% over the next 10 years. It's not happening with oil changes. It's not happening with restaurants necessarily, but
Yeah,
you can guarantee it is here.
here's the number from 2020 to 2040,
There it
it's
is.
growing by 100%, the
Yeah.
80. And yeah, from 2030 to 2040, it's going to grow by 50%. So yeah, it's unbelievable. In fact, I'm working with some advertising executives who've got maybe a little openly gray hair like me, and they're trying to convince marketers and brands. It's like, if you look at the 50 plus market, it's the only segment that's going to grow over the next 20 years. So if you want to sell, more tubes of Crest toothpaste or Listerine bottles,
Mm-hmm.
be marketing to 50 plus. And they think, oh no, they're set in their ways. They're not going to make any new brand choices. And it's like, if that was the case, we'd still be wearing hush puppy shoes
Great
and
point.
shopping at Sears. We
Yeah.
change. We change. If you've got a product that's relevant to me, why aren't you marketing it to me?
That's a great point.
Yeah. So the point here is really that we're going to have more older adults. The boomers are coming, but there's people right behind the boomers coming. And by, the next 50 years, we're just going to have more and more and more people over the age of 65. So is that a problem or an opportunity? And obviously, you and I think it's an opportunity.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
But having more older adults is not the full story. So, like I said, there were three things I wanted to tell you. The first is the future's older. Second, the future's boomers. And the third is the future is not kids, because birth rates have declined globally over the last 60 years.
Hmm.
Certainly, it's accelerated. The social scientists and demographers like to talk about the population age pyramid. And they say that, from the beginning of time, we've always had a lot of young people make it to young adult, and then fewer make it to midlife. And yeah, we get people to 80, 90 and beyond, but not very many. And so they kind of represent it as a pyramid. And when you put the ages out on a chart, you put men on one side, women on the other. This is America in 1916. Yeah, it looks like a triangle or a pyramid where we have much more youth and very few people in their 80, 90s and beyond. And you can see the boomer generation is the red numbers there at the bottom when
Yeah.
this was 1960. But look what's happened since 1960, Mark. This is 1970. This is 1980. This is 1990. Are you noticing a trend? 2000, we're losing our shape, so to speak.
Hmm.
2010, 2020, projected to 2030. Where's my pyramid? And
Right.
the answer is it's gone.
Wow.
And it's not just temporarily gone, it's permanently gone. And it started in 1965 when this product called the birth control pill came on the market. And
Hmm.
our birth rate dropped from 4, the baby boom, to now it's actually under 2. It's at like 1.7. And to replicate your population, demographers say you got to be at 2.1 as the birth rate. So we're already below it.
Hmm.
Countries like China, for example, who put in that one child policy, they've been below it now for 40 years. And their numbers are like this.
Yeah.
They're not a pillar. In fact, the Census Bureau says it's not a pyramid anymore. We're going to call it the population pillar because we're going to have equal numbers. And I go, well, what's with the ancient metaphors? I call it the Empire State Building is the model because we're going to have equal numbers of youth, young adult, midlife, and a lot of people are going to make it to age 85, the 85th floor and beyond. That's going to be the fastest growing segment for the next 40 years is
Yeah.
85.
Huge
So
opportunity. Like we, I have an 18-year-old and I have a 21-year-old, 15 and a 12, and really working to speak to the next generation about, in high school here, and I'm sure everywhere, there is university, always those options. And then people are now finally really talking in a constructive way about the trades,
right.
which is great. But there still isn't really a healthy conversation about a life in aging services. Like if you really want to be in a growing market, as as you look at your own career, you want to have opportunities to engage, innovate, et cetera. This is guaranteed to be an opportunity for you to grow a significant career with just a little bit of effort, I think. It's
Yeah,
an
and it's completely recession proof.
yes,
Yeah, my youngest daughter, Mark, is studying physical therapy. She'll always have a job.
always,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. So then the outcome of this shift, this population shift, the age shift, is that we've gone from a world where we had almost 4-to-1, a ratio of under 18 to 65 plus back in 1960 when the baby boom started or was under 18, to it's going to be 1-to-1 by 2030. And like I said, this is a permanent shift and it really changes everything.
Hmm.
you know, the number of workers. People talking about, well, where are we going to get our workers from? Well, there's not going to be an influx of new workers at
Right.
younger ages. The only segment of the workforce expected to grow over the next 10 years, Bureau of Labor Statistics, 55 and older. And I will ask companies when I'm doing speeches at events and stuff, it's like, do you have a 55 and older strategy for finding and recruiting and keeping 55 and older? And they'll go, no. And I go, then good luck. Because the only way you're going to get people is to steal them from somebody else. And that's a really tough way to go. Now, I'll tell you the other kind of number that jumped out at me. I came across this one the other day. In 2010, not that long ago, for every two people over 65, there was only one person under five. That was 2010. In 2030, there's going to be four people over 65 for every one person under five. So stop talking to me about preschool programs and start talking to me about adult day.
100%. So
Because
we have kind of changed our strategy a little bit when it comes to this. When we used to look at an opportunity area for someone to serve in a home care setting as a franchise owner, we now look at it as there's really three components. There's referral providers in that market. There are a number of seniors, but there's also a number of target females because they end up being about 90% of the overall workforce.
right.
So when we're designing an opportunity for someone to investigate, we now really look at labor and labor opportunities. And then we do have to look at how do we create these new labor channels as well. So we look at both ends of the spectrum. We don't look at much in the middle of people's lives and when they're engaging in an aging services workforce opportunity. But 18 to 28 and 45 to 64, we look at those as we're assessing what challenges we're going to have going into an area to gain the market share of labor force. And
Right.
we've got to find new and better ways to improve that overall so we can have people to serve the aging population. 100% agreed.
So that's kind of sums up my demographic story, which is the number of people over 65 that's just going to grow and grow and grow. It's a nonstop opportunity for the next 30, 40, 50 years. But it comes with this demographic shift. In fact, I think you showed me the chart that says, around 2031, the number of 65 and older will be more than the number of under 18. So it'll go from 1 to 1 to actually now a worse ratio.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's
this is just a permanent. I'll give you another way of how it just changes things. Here in Virginia, up in near DC, is a county called Fairfax County, and they changed how they trained their EMS folks. They used to spend most of the time training them how to put out fires, and now they're spending most of the time how to treat them how to handle people that have fallen and broken a hip. Because
crazy.
they just had to change their training because that's not the issue anymore. So it just emanates out from there, the kinds of stuff we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. So Matt, when it comes to the things that you're most excited about and when it comes to innovations that need to happen or that are happening, I'm interested to get your take on what you've seen in the marketplace and some of your take on kind of new innovations and what things are going to have to change, like old processes becoming new and then just brand new opportunities that are being birthed too.
Well, I do think that a lot of the businesses and organizations and maybe even communities are waking up to this aging shift that's happening and realize that there's opportunity. I mean, Dr. Joe Coughlin of MIT Age Lab wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Longevity Economy, and tried to kind of summarize what the opportunity looks like. Clearly, senior living and senior care is just going to be a tremendous category for the days to come. But we got to remember that there's this new generation of older adults has a different point of view about how and where they want to grow older. And you've seen the studies, and everyone has
100%.
has done the studies where they all have the same answer, which is I want to stay in my home as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't have that option. There weren't ways to stay in the home not that many years ago, but now there are ways that you can stay in your home. And that's where the innovation is happening. You want me to walk through some of those
That would be great.
ones that I've prepared? All right, we'll we will do that. Let me just make one thing. Oop. Hopefully this works again.
Perfect.
So older adults today tell us in every study we've seen from ARP to everybody else that, they want to grow old in their home. They want to stay in their home as long as possible. In fact, I'll ask the audience, how many of you in the audience think about yourself? Do you want to move into a senior care community? And the truth typically is that not many people say that they do. So that means that the answer is some type of home care delivered, where seniors can get access to it. And, again, that's today's 65-year-old doesn't look at all like the last generation at 65. But we're seeing, articles being written in academic journals about how this is an academic journal called Generations, how are we going to accommodate this need that boomers want to age in place? We see companies figuring out, okay, how do we design our products and services so we can help boomers stay in their homes? That's where they see Lowe's in this case sees that as an opportunity. And the pandemic came along and taught us a lesson, which was being in a senior living community comes with the potential downfalls where they were isolated and trapped and couldn't interact. Stay in your home as long as you can was kind of the answer from that. So clearly there's a shift and not everyone can afford senior living and senior housing, so people have to stay in their home. I saw a study that the trade association Leading Age did a couple of years ago. They presented it at one of their conferences, and they were so excited about it because despite all this research that says everyone wants to stay in their home, in fact, I saw a study a couple of years ago, Mark, in Minnesota. They asked 600 boomers all about their plans for the next stage of life. And one of the questions is, do you ever see yourself living in an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility? And do you know how many of the 600 people said they could envision themselves living there?
Hmm.
Zero.
Zero.
They could they're clearly in denial. Some are going to have to end up there, but
Yeah.
that's how much they don't want. Anyway, Leading Age saw that and said, well, we got to do some own research. So they did research and they probably came out and said, we found out that if you said, okay, let's say you have physical limitations or you've got a cognitive issue like Alzheimer's or dementia, 4 out of 10 boomers said, you know what? I don't want to be a burden on my family. I'll go move into a senior living place where I can get the care I need.
Yeah.
The association was very excited about that. And I'm listening to that and I'm going, isn't that interesting? So you're telling me that if I have a physical limitation or I've got cognitive issues and I have to depend on my family, 6 out of 10 boomers are telling me I'm going to stay in my home.
Yeah.
That's how much they want to stay in their home, despite having it. I'm going to be a burden on the family. I'm staying in my home. So I look at that and say, well, okay, is that a problem or an opportunity? And the answer is it's a little bit of both. But those of us who are in the home care business and trying to think about home care and how do we provide services where people are living, how do we do it? So the other big change is that, as I said, boomers now have the ability to stay at home. There's a lot of these innovations. There are all kinds of services that have
100%.
come up just in the last, dozen years, from everything to, all the home-based services, but the naturally occurring retirement communities like the Villages model, which is out there. Uh, uh, the fact that AL and skilled nursing, assisted living and skilled nursing is really short-term rehab. So you go do short-term and come out. You don't have to commit to living there. All sorts of different things we see out there. And on
Well,
top of that, there's companies like yours and others in the senior care business that are just, flourishing in providing home care,
yeah. I
from
mean,
non-medical to full medical.
and we are seeing people, that in independent living, what a lot of times people don't, the consumer that we really work on educating is the daughter, the 45 to 64-year-old female. We call her Lisa. That was the #1 name in the late 60s for about 4 years. And so Lisa just hit that Social Security names database. And Lisa is doing the investigation. She's interested. She oftentimes intuitively knows that mom isn't quite ready to move. And so she'll oftentimes reach out to the most trusted, biggest name locally. Oftentimes that's a senior living community. The senior living community will then offer the referral, but it's still part of this process because they're brand new consumers into this space. So they haven't purchased home care before. There's a lot more information out there now that they can get, but everybody wants to start at least in an independent living community setting because that provides the most freedom, the most opportunity. It's the most probably like their home in terms
Right.
of that setting. But what we're finding is that inside of those independent living situations, the next level, as we know, is assisted living and then skilled, which is your old school nursing home, even though it's improved from the 70s and 80s. But more people accessing these types of services inside of independent living to hold on to. They don't want to move up to that next level. And so we can provide help with ADLs and with all the things that are, become a challenge that you begin to access services in an assisted living setting, but you can provide a lot of those services at home, or even actually about 60% of all home care in the US right now happens on a senior living campus, oftentimes where they have services. It's just the one-on-one nature of the services as well as more relationship focused. And I think that's oftentimes what a daughter wants to ensure is that it's reliable and there's a good personality match with mom. And you can get that if you're buying it as a consumer one-on-one. It's harder to get when it's more in a congregate setting, which oftentimes is what people are trying to avoid along the way. But there are great operators out there, and it's a sought after service.
Yeah, I would, I don't know if it's a dirty little secret, but they don't talk much about it. I think the senior living operators who have the full continuum of care would like you to stay in independent living as long as possible and just put your toe in the assisted living and skilled nursing and then die immediately because it costs them so much more to provide those services. So
Yeah.
it's in their own self-interest to keep you in independent living and to have, that's the best
Yeah,
business.
that's part of the business. Yep.
Well, the other thing is, you don't necessarily have to move to senior living because people are doing things like, the accessory dwelling units or granny flats, they're called. They're building little bungalows behind their house. So either the caregiver can stay there or mom and dad can stay there and the family can provide care there. Then they end up with a resource that once mom and dad are gone, they got an Airbnb that they can rent out. So there's other models out there. It's amazing how much money is being invested in the age tech market, which is all around helping people stay in place. This is the age tech market wrap. You can't even make so many categories in there, but I picked one, the independence category, which is all about staying in their home. I actually think independence is the wrong word.
Hmm.
They're not really seeking independence. What they're seeking is control over their lives.
Yeah.
They don't want to give up control.
Yep.
And these are all tools that let me do it, from companies like NeighborForce, which are non-healthcare related, those just like TaskRabbit type services for them, to the sensory aids, to the mobility helpers, the transportation people, the finance people. And yeah, there are folks that help with activities of daily living. So
Hmm.
it's literally billions of dollars are being invested in all of these new ways to help people age in place. And then on top of it, you got tools like, that Apple Watch. I don't need the pendant that says I've fallen and can't get up. The watch says, hey, I noticed you just fell. Who do you want me to call?
Yeah.
It's
Unbelievable.
unbelievable. And who knows what the next iteration they'll release, and, there'll be AI will be telling you.
Yeah.
I can tell you've been eating too much sodium. It's like, how in the world do you know?
Yeah.
So the management, it's just going to be remarkable. And then there's the reality that one of the reasons people move into communities is because they don't have transportation. They can't drive anymore. Well, now there's Uber and Lyft, and who knows when self-driving cars are coming. So the point is that home care is poised to capitalize on this trend that everyone wants to stay in their home. And the question is, and home care, interestingly, as a category, has been one that's been mostly local. There's not really too many, other than the franchise guys, that most of the home care operators with real medical care, nursing care, tend to be more regional or local in nature. But the home is where all the action is, and it's where all the money is being spent too. I like to say that the last one in the pool is a rotten egg, like we used to do when we were kids.
Yeah, for sure.
I went and saw stuff like this, Mark, that just blew me away. That Walgreens just bought a year or so ago, bought this company called CareCentrix, and for billions, and Humana spent billions to buy out the partners in their home health business, and CVS spent 8 billion on a acquisition, and Optimum 5 billion. And your former company, Home Instead, got acquired by Honor to really transform the home
Yeah,
care experience. So it's clearly this is where the action is, and this is where the money is going. And even hospitals are realizing that we've got to provide care outside of our building. So there's this whole category called hospital at home. And it's just gaining momentum, and it just amazes me the kinds of things. Uh, it means family members must be caregivers, ready or not, because we're going to be there. And I kind of summed it all up. I gave a presentation at the Home Care Association national conference, I guess, 2 years ago, and really asked the question of what business is home care really in? And for most of the career of home care, the legacy, if you will, has been to help people take care of their activities of daily living,
yeah,
come in the house and essentially, manage their activities. And I would say that that's not the future, and that's not really the business that you're in. What you're really in is the outcome business, which is keeping people healthy.
yeah,
People want to stay in their home, and you're the reason that they can stay in their home.
yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity to kind of shift the story, if you will, about what home care is all about. It's about outcomes for older adults that allows them to live the life they have and want to continue to have and be in control of, which is to stay in their home.
100%. When as you're talking, a few things came up just to connect on. One, I did remember why I was so confused about the question about percentage, because actually, when you look at states and territories, Puerto Rico is right now number one in terms of highest percentage of seniors in their population, which is interesting
Wow.
because they're you've heard stories about celebrities and business people moving to Puerto Rico because of the tax situation there. So I almost wonder if Puerto Rico won't become more and more of a haven for aging, more than it is now already, and have an increased population when it comes to that. It was Puerto Rico, Maine, Vermont, and then Florida was in terms of percentage overall. And as we look at our business model and just in terms of number of seniors, you generally want at least 50,000 seniors in a given area to be able to serve that area. And when you look at the state of Florida, you're looking at 4.5 million people. You're looking at there's 80 to 100 business opportunities for people to serve. Now, that is getting sliced and diced by a lot of other companies, but there are going to be these high percentage kind of concentration states like that do provide some opportunity. We always cross-reference that with the legislative environment and how hard it is. And I do think there are certain states where I get concerned when I look at the state of New York and the state of Washington, not to pick on two states, but like I think when it comes to legislation and regulation around home care and aging services in general, certain states, the leaders of those states have they've created a monopoly in one sense on maybe not a monopoly, but they greatly influence the type of services that people are going to be able to access, because in some of the legislation, like New York, for instance, there's almost no question in my mind that the legislation that's involved right now in the state of New York is to prevent anybody from the outside coming in. And if you don't increase the number of providers there, the state and its seniors are going to be in trouble, and they're going to naturally leave the state and go to other places where there's a better legislative environment potentially. And I think those environments are going to naturally have more operators that are able to operate more freely. That is one of the things that we're seeing, a little bit more industry specific, but I think senior living could look at that same kind of schematic and probably see those same opportunities with their industry as well. I just don't see a ton of support or understanding at the federal level when it comes to some of the staffing mandates. It's almost done with without a sense of the real demographics that are happening in the country when it comes to the number of healthcare professionals and healthcare adjacent professionals that are needed to run either a business successfully or a senior living community or whatever it might be. So there are some things that we really need to figure out. And I think I'd love to get your take as well. Like I would say, I'm probably a little bit more, Nebraska, probably a little bit more conservative, but really being in home care, have a very open mind. I want action when it comes to getting people opportunities from who are newcomers, who are immigrants, to get them opportunities and access to serve in the healthcare or the healthcare adjacent field. I'm almost like, when you look at the trends, 2031, where we're going to have more seniors than children for the first time, it can't all be done with a robot, or it can't all be done with AI. We're going to have to do some of this serving in the next generation with people. What's your take on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have a magic silver bullet to tell you, okay, here's the solution,
Sure,
because it's a combination of 27 different things.
that's right. That's
Uh,
it.
and one of the things that I'm trying to do in thinking about my cozy home concept was it's really targeted middle income, which is an underserved market in senior housing.
Exactly.
And the intention is, okay, I envisioned that seniors, the next generation of seniors, would be much more comfortable doing things like, I don't know, ordering their groceries and having it delivered, or getting their drugs from prescriptions delivered to them, or ordering stuff from Amazon, or the telemedicine. They grow comfortable with telemedicine. Now, the bad news about COVID is it gummed up the works of my business, because I launched in January of 2020, so it's
Right.
not great timing. But the good news about COVID is we got to that future much faster. Now older adults are fine with telemedicine and having stuff delivered to them, and it just happened overnight. So I look at the future of senior care, really senior living, is the way it's delivered now, is that it's not going to be delivered within the four walls of the community, and kind of controlled by the community, except at the very high end, for the people that got the big money and want to go live that country club,
Mm-hmm.
hospitality model kind of thing.
Sure.
I think the rest of it is going to be kind of delivered, senior living delivered as a service. And ironically, the ones who can afford to have it delivered to their homes are the richest of the rich, which are the prime opportunity for current senior living communities.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
so their prime customer base is the one who can afford to age in place. And they haven't figured out that that's a problem for them. So that's one. The second thing is okay, mine's a middle income model. So what I'm trying to do is, okay, how do I'm not going to be able to provide all those services on site by me. I'm going to have to partner with area resources to bring them in. I'm going to have to find visiting nurses who can come, or home health aides who can come visit my members of my community. But by aggregating all these seniors together, we're going to have close to 100 in this community. I now can bring in a home health aide who maybe can go to 4 or 5 different houses, and they each pay $25, but the aide gets the 4-hour shift. And it works for everybody, because I've aggregated seniors, and now I can deliver senior living as a service
Yeah.
in the community. So that's part of the thinking that I'm trying to do to solve it, because then I've got one aid worker who can help 4 people that day, as opposed to go on one visit to one person that day.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. I do. Well, I think, as I'm as I've been thinking about our interaction and our discussion today, we went back and took a look at what our research said that Lisa is really looking for. And there are really 3 primary things that are on the top of her mind. One is outcomes. So you covered that today. It's quality care. She wants outcomes from the care that she receives. And I think that she receives on behalf of her mom or her dad.
Right.
She's looking for outcomes. The second thing she's looking for is reliability. She wants a service that's reliable, and with reliability, it's synonymous with consistency. The third thing is in the home care industry is personality fit. And when you can get a personality fit, you can get somebody that is a good connector and meshes well, then that's a fantastic outcome of the service. And Matt, these are things that I learned from you 15 years ago that are still true today. You developed this schematic of what people are looking for. And then when it comes to price, what people are looking for more than lowest cost, they're looking for value. Value is more important on an importance and satisfaction scale than price. Price is again, it's part of it, right? Like you want appropriately priced services, but you just want something out of what you know you're going to pay. You just want to get the most out of it. And I think, orienting all of these services, and you could probably say that for almost all of the services that you shared with us today about kind of the future in the next 10 years, is that if you can hit those kind of four criteria of, outcomes, quality care, reliability, personality fit, make sure your service it's not just a black and white service. You're not just purchasing tasks, and then you're providing value. You could be, this could be there could be great opportunity ahead for you. As much as people are thinking about technology and AI and how that's transforming the way we do business, this increase, 50% increase in the number of people who are going to need services just in this industry alone, they're really missing the boat if they're not looking at that and they have the capabilities to do so.
Yeah, I have one additional thought I'd like to share that's
Please.
related to this. So, how do we attract people to this category to come work, to be workers in caregiving? And I think that the industry as a whole, maybe at the trade association level, needs to think about how do we clarify what it is we're asking people to do and how we are equipping them to do it. And what I mean by that is that caregiving to me is what people do. It's not who they are. Caregivers, I mean, the family member is a caregiver, family caregiver.
True.
The folks that all these home care companies have got, they've first off, the folks who go into home care in any way, shape, or form self-select, because if they're not kind, compassionate people, they're not going to show up and take care of folks and do the services that they
Yeah.
need to do, or they're not going to last very long in it. It's just like, I know I'm not equipped to be a telephone pole repairman because I'm scared of heights. So I'm going to self-select out of that. But if I have a kind, compassionate heart, especially for older adults, then I might find myself a good fit for being a caregiver. But where I think we're falling short is the amount of training and education and skills that these folks have, whether they're CNAs or not, even if they're just home care providers. To me, I think we ought to change, still say what they do is caregiving, but I think we should call them care pros and rebrand what it is they are, because that then gives them a sense of, okay, this is now a career. It's got perhaps some upward mobility tied to it. I'm just not a caregiver. I'm a care pro. I've got some training and I'm going to get experience. And in 2 or 3 years of being a care pro, I can leverage that into getting a CNA or going to nursing school or going somewhere further because I've been a care pro. And that requires maybe some national standards as it relates to what a care pro should be doing and not should be doing and so forth. So there's an opportunity from a macro standpoint to essentially rebrand. Stop talking about what it is you do and talk about who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think there have been efforts in the industry. I think that's actually an official term of one of the home care companies in the industry. We call our caregivers care advocates, but because I think that word advocacy has been hijacked by the legal field. When we went out and asked Lisa what are the words that really associate her with positive care for her parents, she said the words thrive and advocacy that
Right.
this idea that you're kind of standing in the middle. I'll tell you a couple of other things just from a cultural perspective related to aging services that are observations. Number one, when I came from home care, I didn't even know that there were associations that helped lead and develop senior living communities. So I didn't even know that Leading Age, for instance, existed. Leading
Hmm.
Age is the largest organization that helps nonprofit senior living communities get education, training, et cetera, as a supportive organization. So I think there's this integration that needs to happen. But what I see on both sides, I see what we're seeing is when I visit with senior living providers and their executive teams, I'm trying to help, I'm trying to figure out how to get this through. I feel like post-pandemic, the senior living industry is now understanding what the home care industry has always understood, and that they're in a labor shortage business.
Right.
But nobody has tapped the chief operating officer of a senior living community on the shoulder and said, hey, you know how you've been operating with one HR person proudly over your large continuous care retirement community with a part-time admin assistant? That model is now gone. You think you have great culture in your community. However, caregivers will stay with you. Anyone that's on a healthcare team or home care team will be with you after 1 year. If they are 90% will be with you after 1 year if they've been referred by another caregiver, another person on their staff. So if you think you have great culture, do a double check. Check out how the frontline people are actually being treated. And what we found is that there's really 3 to 5 core things that people working in aging services are looking for directly from their employer to want to continue to work there. The number one thing is friendliness. And so I think there's this culture change when it comes to aging services, and the leaders in aging services really looking at their models saying, you know what, our old HR model that we have one HR rep, one HR VP, and she's the hardest working person. She's a project manager for the campus. That's not working anymore. You need multiple people in those roles. You have to double check on culture. Are people really, I mean, because what really is happening in the home care and the healthcare adjacent community is that people working, caregivers, LPNs, RNs, are telling their friends, you know what, don't work here, I'm biding my time, I'm moving on somewhere else. Or they're having the discussion, you need to work for Matt, he's open to cozy, he's a great guy, you need to, that's the referral, you need to you need to consider working for Cozy Home Community. But the friendliness part of this, so there is this culture in healthcare and healthcare adjacent services where there is, you need to prove it to me first before I really invest in you as an employee, kind of like how the WNBA tried to get Caitlin Clark to kind of toughen her up initially, like have her pay her dues.
Right.
Have you pay your dues mentality in healthcare and home care is just not working. You need to find people who are advocates who can invest in others and in younger talent and do that in a way where they are giving away that help and assistance freely. So you need to find, I think, cultural leaders, and you really need to, communities, everybody needs to double check on their culture. We just did a caregiver survey where we asked them, 4 key questions about their overall satisfaction of working at our locations. And, we had a number of locations that really had high responses, and we had certain locations that really had maybe kind of beat their chest on what great culture they had, but then they have 0 responses come back. So that tells us, like, is there really culture present in your location, or is there not? And so we have to ask the question and say, to us, like, if they don't care about giving, maybe it's not present. So I think there is this opportunity for every healthcare and home care adjacent company, or healthcare adjacent company, or home care, or senior living, anybody working aging services, to double check on some things on how they're treating employees, whether or not they're investing in the community, whether they're providing a professional environment, and the fourth area is, are they providing training and education opportunities regularly so people feel like they're moving on a path. All things that you can't invest enough in. What I'm finding when I talk to senior living operators is that they're confused. They don't know that they're going that they think that there's a small campfire right now that they have to put out. But what they're really in the middle of is a forest fire for the best talent, to get your unfair share of the very best talent. And that the game has changed, and that now their business is labor shortage. They used to, it is a care organization, but it is categorically different. If you can't focus on those things, you won't have the people that you need and the demographics to support your business model. And your demographics today really kind of confirm those things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the only way you're going to get somebody is to take them from somewhere else.
Fact.
So what is it that
Yes.
you're offering that's better than somewhere else? And somewhere else could be Walmart down the street that's paying,
Yeah.
15 an hour. And culture is certainly one of it. I think the leading age uh, state association in Pennsylvania created a video a couple of years ago to try to attract millennials to working in senior living. And they did it by showing first all the different kinds of jobs. Like, you can be a chef, you can be a swim
Yeah.
instructor. There's all kinds of different jobs you can have and be in senior living and aging services.
Yeah.
Uh, but their line in their point about the occupation, the career path is, this is a job you'll love that will love you back. And they're showing the relationship between the seniors and the workers.
Yeah.
And that idea of you can have a purpose-driven job where every day you give and you get back as much as you give. And you ain't getting that at Walmart.
For sure.
It's not a job that's going to love you back.
So
I
last,
think there's ways to do it, to go about this, to really kind of elevate the whole career path for
yeah.
anyone.
Well, last night, sharing just like maybe one final story, I was at my 91-year-old second cousin's visitation service. Jermaine, he was my mom's, my mom passed away in 1993 when I was 17, but I remember him, and he was one of her favorite first cousins. So we come from like large farm families. I have 72 first cousins, Matt. Can you believe that? And
No,
I'm
you're
the
lying.
second youngest out of all of those first cousins. We had families of 12, families of 10, all over. We have one of our families is in Richmond, actually, one of my aunt's families. Anyway, my second cousin died. He gave me, years ago, he gave me a cabinet that my great-great-grandparents brought across the plains when they immigrated here to the Midwest. And my sister, Sherry, had it refinished. Anyway, I was there last night, paying my respects. I pull into the parking lot, and who pulls up? This lady named Yolanda, and then this lady named Kim. And Kim brought her family and brought her 7-year-old and 10-year-old grandkids, and her daughter and her granddaughter was there. And I was like, how do you guys know Jermaine, my cousin? They were like, well, we worked at the senior living community, Ridgewood Senior Living Community here, which is part of Heritage Communities, that we love Jermaine. He was a part of our family. He was a part of our community. I'm like, and then the former executive director, who's not even there anymore, Sarah, she was there. She had left. She had gone on. She hadn't been there for years, or maybe at least a year. But they built genuine relationships. And when we talk about caregiving being a privilege, or being an aging services employee, that's a privileged point to be. I think we need to connect a little bit more with this reality of where we're all going. My dad would always say, son, nobody here is getting out alive. It was like his way of saying, hey, we're all going here. Like, why not? But when you look at aging services and these, like Yolanda, Kim, and Sarah showing up last night, it's amazing. Like, and nothing against these other companies, but where he went and shopped for groceries, they weren't going to be at the visitation, but everybody who had engaged with him, built a relationship, delivered services, cared for him genuinely, they were there paying their last respects, showing him and his family dignity. And how amazing is that when they're showing him dignity as he has more and more needs as he grew older, and then they're there paying that dignity back. I just thought, wow, what a tribute to these employees. And that is that's the hidden thing about working in aging services, is that you build these relationships that literally you can end up on somebody's memorial card if you work in aging services. And that is one of the most privileged places that you can actually be in society.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for your time. And man, I just appreciate the fact that you've uh, used your life to help understand boomers, and now you're doing innovative things as well. And I'm so excited about your new plant in Slippery Rock. I will try to be out there this fall and take a look at it, and would love to connect with you out there. I'm so excited for you.
Hey, I appreciate you reaching out, Mark, and I wish nothing but success for you guys at HCAN. And yeah, let's stay connected.
Yeah, sounds great, Matt. Thanks.